In the heart of bustling Tampa is Seminole Heights. For nearly 2 months in 2017, it was home to fear and terror.
This is a city that had just lived through Irma and has now spent the last 51 days dealing with a serial killer.
These are the faces of the victims: Benjamin Mitchell, Monica Hoffa, Anthony Neboa, and Ronald Felton, all shot to death.
We had neighbors that were living in fear. We had families that were devastated.
Mitchell was the first victim, shot near a bus stop. Hoffa's body was found in a parking lot. Neboa was killed walking home, and Felton died shot in the back. The victims had no apparent connection, except they were all killed within a half-mile of one another while they were walking alone. The slayings, unprovoked and random, had investigators and the community desperate to catch the killer. The break in the case came from a tip at this McDonald's restaurant. An employee here gave the manager a bag for safekeeping. Inside the bag, a loaded 9mm handgun.
That firearm was used in all 4 murders.
The gun led police to 24-year-old Howell Donaldson III. Donaldson admitted he owned the gun, but denied he committed the murders.
You murdered those people. Your phone puts you right there at specific times. We know it's you. Can you please tell us why?
The question goes unanswered, and the conversation ends when Donaldson invokes his right to counsel.
I just want to, talk to my attorney.
Donaldson's parents are shaken by his arrest.
We're people of faith, and we're going to lean on our faith as we go through this ordeal.
The Donaldsons are standing by their child. They have visited him frequently, providing encouragement and support while he is behind bars awaiting trial.
You're trying to keep your strength up, you're exercising a little bit.
I'm so broken I can't. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Donaldson is not admitted to any of the shootings, seemingly more concerned about his own well-being during a court appearance.
Some unfortunate things to happen to me, and since I've been in there, I've become ill.
Harold Schechter, an expert on serial killers, has authored several books on the subject.
So I would tend to think of him more as a rampage killer, or possibly a spree killer. You know, these kinds of personalities often are incapable of feeling any genuine remorse.
There is no set trial date as of yet for Donaldson, but when he goes to court, he will face the families of the victims who lost their loved ones, and he will face the death penalty.
It's just having faith that the right thing's going to be done and that there's going to be justice for what was done to our loved one, Monica.
And again, for me, when you have a story like this and a case like this where, you know, there's these killings taking place, then you make an arrest and the killings stop, to me, that's pretty persuasive evidence. But I don't know if you can even argue that. Let's bring in, from Tampa, Florida, State Attorney for Hillsborough County, Andrew Warren is with us. Andrew, great to see you.
Vinnie, likewise. How are you doing tonight?
Good, good. Can we start with that notion, the fact that an arrest is made and it seems that the killing stopped? I mean, to me, that's great circumstantial evidence. Is that something that can even be admissible or argued in front of a jury?
Well, in a normal circumstance, we can try to make that argument. One of the problems we're facing now is that the 4 cases were severed. So this is set to go forward as 4 separate trials. And it's up in the air whether we're even going to be able to bring in all the evidence pertaining to the 4 murders in each of those trials. So you're absolutely right. It's part of the reason why we know we have the right guy. But knowing deep down that you have the right perpetrator and being able to prove it in a court of law are 2 very different things.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. We know that in all the cases here on Court TV. But when you're talking about a serial killer, but you can't really argue that he's a serial killer, it becomes even more difficult. Is the smoking gun in this case the actual gun?
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it. We have a situation where on October 3rd of 2017, Trey Donaldson goes to a local gun store and shooting range and purchases a .40 cal Glock handgun. He's got to wait a few days for the background check to go through, and he goes and picks up the gun on October 7th, along with a 20-round box of SIG brand Smith & Wesson ammunition. 2 days later, Benjamin Mitchell's murdered. Over the next 36 days, we have 3 more murders, and we can tie the gun, based on the casings and the ballistics, all back to the same gun, to all 4 murders. And then you fast forward, and on day 50, when he ends up handing that gun, same exact gun, in a brown bag to a supervisor at McDonald's. And of course, she looks in, she sees the gun, and this is what led to his arrest and capture. So yeah, that gun is the smoking gun. It's what ties together all 4 killings, and it's extremely incriminating evidence.
And to me, that's one of the most bizarre facts of this whole thing, is that for whatever reason, the gun is put in a bag and given to a supervisor. Is there any more insight into how and why that happened?
Well, I can't get into information that hasn't been publicly disclosed yet. But as you know, we don't have to prove what was going through his mind when he committed the murders. We don't have to prove what was going through his mind when he handed over that gun. We're hoping to be able to come to some understanding of what caused him to commit these crimes, not because we have to prove it at trial, but because maybe it gives that sliver of closure to the victims and their families as they try to wrap their heads around these random killings that took their loved ones away.
And how are the families holding up? And we see the victims on the screen now. So tragic, young people, just living their lives. How are the families holding up? This COVID shutdown has wreaked havoc across our nation, but our system of justice, with all the backups and the wheels of justice sometimes turn slowly, but they've come to a screeching halt.
They have indeed. The pandemic has slowed things down. The families have been so strong and resolute and patient. They're supportive of the prosecution. They're understanding of why this is taking so long. And this is a complicated case. You have 4 murders. The defense has time to prepare their defense and prepare the case. And we have a ton of witnesses and a ton of information, and the defense has to have time to go through all that. But we're coming up on 3.5 years since this started. And the victims' families are ready for us to move forward. That's one of the unfortunate side effects of the severance is, of course, it complicates the process for us to prove it. But what's even worse is that it really delays justice for the victims' families, because now rather than having 1 trial, we have 4 trials, and each family has to wait one by one by one by one.
Unbelievable.
To see him held accountable.
Andrew Warren, State Attorney, Hillsborough County, thank you so much. Appreciate it.